Hello, good evening. Happy Tuesday, or if you are watching us on the replay, happy whatever day it is you're watching us. I am Allison and I'm with Gotham Quilts, and we have a very important topic to talk about today. First, I cannot keep this to myself. I'm so excited. This weekend, a friend and I are taking a long weekend, and we are driving all the way from Minneapolis down to Paducah, Kentucky, which you might know is the quilt capital of the United States, if not the world. I'm not 100% sure on that, but they are known for all things quilty. Through September, I believe it is, the Quilt Museum is hosting a Tula Pink retrospective. It's basically, I think, 20 years of Tula Pink that will go through some of her most famous fabrics, some of her most famous quilts, and not to short shrift anyone else at the Quilt Museum, but there are going to be a lot of fabulous exhibits. So really very excited to take a trip down to Paducah and see what is going on there. I personally have never been. So, if you have any of your best and favorite Paducah tips, put them in the comments. That would be fantastic to get all of your expertise and your knowledge and your experience when we're going down to Paducah. And Raquel, no need to be jealous, my friend. Is plenty of time to go down there. If I know sometimes when we're going on little quilty trips, it's just there's so much out there to see, and I wish we all had time to see all of it. But what we can do is learn and get excited from each other. So I will be sure on the next one of the next lives coming up, tell you all about the trip and all about the cool things that we saw. And hello and good evening to you, friend Joanne. It's good to see you. We always love to know where you're from in the comments here. So if you are new or just joining us or just stopping in or finally taking the opportunity to say hello, let us know all about you in the comments. So very excited about Paducah, very excited about all the quilt shops we're going to stop at on the way down. Because that's a great thing about local quilt shops is they all have their own flair, their own what they're buying. No local quilt shop can have everything. And so I know that we are going to get a fabulous variety, plenty of stops, that's for sure. We haven't figured out the road tunes yet, so I'll take suggestions on that too. In any event, so that's going to be what's happening for me this weekend. Raquel, definitely needed a debrief. Absolutely. So that is going to be exciting. So I had to get that out of the way. The other thing we're going to talk about today is really very exciting in its own right. It's not quite as sexy as a trip to Paducah, but it's just as important. If you think of how long we each spend pressing and cutting and sewing and sitting. I heard something the other day that they say that sitting is the new smoking, that is like the biggest drain on people's health. It's causing health issues doing all this sitting. So today's show is designed all around making sure that your sewing setup is as healthy and as comfortable as it can be, because we want you to sew for a very long time. Too often in the shop here or even online, we hear of people who are no longer able to do the things that they love because their body is failing them. And so hopefully these tips and tricks will get you a little bit longer, a little bit more time with the craft that we all love. So that's the topic of today's show, all about how to stay comfortable, how to stay ergonomic when you are quilting. Now, the one thing I'm going to start the show with is that in most of these cases, there's not a whole lot of agreement from experts on exactly the right position or exactly the right way. One thing that the experts do agree on is it's the repetitive motions that kill us, right? It's doing the same motion over and over again that's really hard on the body. So we'll get into some specifics of how to set up the different areas of your sewing room, but the one takeaway from this particular show is take breaks often. And I fall victim to this too, but what the experts recommend and what they I guess what I'm trying to say is what they insist on is that taking breaks is actually you get more done, more accomplished than if you just power through and you have a marathon session. Now, that might be counterintuitive, right? If you're like, let's say, chain piecing, for example. I absolutely love and adore just sitting down and sewing through 100, 200 at the same time, right? Sometimes that could be an hour or maybe more of sitting in the same place and doing the same movement. What the experts recommend is that you take breaks. Every 20 minutes or so, 20 or 30 minutes of doing the same thing, you take a about a 1 minute break, sometimes 90 seconds, depending on what it is that you're doing. But you take about a minute break from what you're doing. And then after that minute, you kind of stretch out, you know, you shake it off and you get back into it. And just taking that break just gives your body a little bit of a refresher, a time to heal and get back into it, and it avoids some of these repetitive movement injuries. So that is tip number one: is for every depending if actually let's jump into that for a little bit. Now, the recommendation for how long to spend doing a thing before you take a break is going to be different depending on what it is that you're doing. If you're doing something that takes very fine motor skills, so if you are English paper piecing, for example, and you're holding your paper pieces and you're stitching, those are very small movements, and you could see how tight my hand is, how clamped my hand is holding these imaginary paper pieces. That puts a lot of strain on your hand and your wrist. So the smaller the movement, the smaller the action, the less time you should go in between breaks, the smaller the time period that you should do it without breaking. So something like that, you might want to take a break, a little quick break every 20, 30 minutes. If you're doing something where you're very relaxed and comfortable at your sewing machine, certainly you could do that for a little bit longer before you take a break. But listen to your body, listen to your doctor if your doctor has strong feelings about this, but you need to listen to yourself. And that brings me to point number two of all of this: is the reason the experts don't agree on one set height, one set motion for everyone is because all of our bodies are different. And so you've got to do what's right for your body, for your height, for your what your body can do, and what it feels good doing. So uh, use these tips as starting points, but listen to your body above all else. And so you might say, well, where do I start? Right? What do I take a look at? And I've got Allison from the past here. We did some recording of some videos because some of these things it's just easier to show you in a pre-recorded video. So let's go ahead and get started. We are going to start where most good quilts start, and that is going to be the ironing board. Hopefully, when you get your yardage or when you get your fabric home, you give it a quick press, get out all the wrinkles from how it might have been folded or in a bag or in storage. And so that's where we are going to start today with the pressing station. So there's a formula to figure out the exact right height your ironing board should be. And I bet you won't even have to write it down. First, stand comfortably with your arm at a 90-degree angle. You might need a friend for this next part, but measure the distance from the bottom of your arm to the floor. Take that number and subtract 4 inches, and that is the height that you'll want the top of your ironing board to be from the distance of the floor. So in this case, this ironing board is perfectly set up for my height or someone of my same height. If you have a board like this, there is generally a lever on either side and you could adjust it up or down. There's usually 5 to 10 different height settings that you could choose from. So you can get it really dialed in. If you decide to make or build your own pressing station, just keep that formula in mind. Something else that you might want to keep handy around your pressing station is a small step stool or ledge of some sort that's about 6 to 9 inches high. In this case, I have this ceramic pot. I don't know that I would recommend that going forward, but I think it'll work for the demonstration here. A plastic step stool will work just perfect. If you are going to spend a lot of time ironing, you might consider getting something raised up about the 6 to 9 inches to help protect your lower back and keep it from getting fatigued. We've all had those marathon ironing sessions where we're going through a ton of yardage and your back starts to hurt or you're hunched over. These couple of tricks will keep you in the exact right position to press all day long. Even after you get the height of your pressing station dialed in, there's one more area that you want to look at to help prevent injury, and that is with your iron. Now, normally when we are pressing, we press horizontally and then we set our iron up to protect the surface below. You can see, especially after a couple of times of starting and stopping, that's a lot of strain on my wrist. And it could aggravate some conditions that you might have, like tendonitis or carpal tunnel. There are a couple of irons that can help prevent that. First one is this little mini project iron. Not only is it a little bit lighter weight, it's still got some heft to it though. Is the It comes with this little trivet, and so the intention is that after you're done pressing, you just set the iron on that silicone trivet, and that avoids the up and down motion. Now, you certainly can set it upright like that, and it's designed to do so, but that is one of the key features to just leave it flat like that. Another one is by the same company. This is an Oliso iron, and this is an iron that has a little base at the bottom. And what that base does is when you set it down, when you release the iron, it lifts it up off of your surface here so it doesn't scorch it. That definitely avoids the up and down movement, that strain on my wrist, just by leaving it sit. Now, if you do a lot of holding on your iron, so for example, you do some pressing, you set it to the side, and for most of your time, your iron is just hot and waiting for you, you might want to consider a silicone trivet underneath. It still gets pretty hot, even though it is a distance away from your pressing station. Or if your ironing board has a little metal add on like this, you could put that over there and just worry about it a lot less. The last iron I want to show you is this cordless model. This is an option that sits in the base here. You do your pressing and then you just slide it back in. And you can see there was almost no bend to my wrist when I either picked it up or put it back. This angle is intentional to help spare some of that repetitive movement on your wrist. So these are just three different kinds of irons that could help some of that strain. So when we are looking at having a nice long career in sewing, we want to make sure that our stations are set up for our comfort. Any of these would be a great option. It just depends what works best for you and your body. So, with that, finding the right ironing height is probably the only thing that I found that the experts agree on, that there actually is an actual formula to it. So, just as a reminder, you want to put your arms at a 90-degree angle and measure from the bottom of your arm to the floor. Take that number, subtract 4 inches, and that's going to be the height of your ironing board. So I know lots of people have their own ironing station that they built. Sometimes ironing boards aren't really the best for us quilters. We need some more space, we need some more real estate. And so a lot of you might have homemade ironing setups. Just do a little bit of measurement. You can even just set your arms above your ironing board just to make sure you've got enough clearance there to have that be comfortable for a long, long career. So with that, I have to be sure to say hello to Eileen from Honolulu. Aloha to you. It's not often that we see you on the live shows, a lot of times because of the time difference, but we're so happy to see you live today. And this is 100% right. Raquel has mentioned those big Oloso irons, the one with the feet that raised it up. It's a heavy iron. Now, sometimes that can be great if you need a little bit of heft for what you're pressing, but if you have hand issues, they are a little bit heavy. And I think that's part of the reason why that automatic lift is so important for those Oliso irons, but they are definitely hefty irons, that's for sure. So, um, with that, I don't think I see any questions on the pressing station. Let's move on to one of my favorite things to do when sewing. It's cutting. I love the cutting part of making a quilt. So let's talk about some ways to set up your station as far as cutting goes.
I'm here at the Kookaburra cutting table. Now, I'm not here to tell you about all the cool features. What I'm here to talk about is the height and the comfort around your cutting setup. Now, the experts don't necessarily agree on the correct height, but what they do agree on is that it should be comfortable, you should be loose. There are a couple of things that you should look for. One is you want to make sure that it's not so high that your shoulders shrug up. In this case, I can comfortably put my shoulders back, keep my arms at 90 degrees, and kind of like the pressing station, I've got a couple inches between the bend in my arm and the top of the table. The other thing is I don't want it too low so that I'm hunched over. That is also not great for your back or your cutting in general. This seems like a perfect height for me. It allows me to get some leverage on the fabric and slides right through it. I've got plenty of room to cut, so this is a good cutting table for me. Let me show you an example that's not quite as good. Now, here's a table that is the wrong size for my height and body. It looks very similar to the one we were just at, but it's a couple of inches lower, and those couple of inches really make a difference. I can feel already that it's a little too short for me because my shoulders immediately hunch over in order to get a good cut here. So, this I can feel immediately that this is the wrong size. Sometimes you just have to try out the right size to know that you've been using the wrong size all along.
So with that, I think when you are cutting the rules around that, the way to get ergonomically correct are pretty self-explanatory. I think they're pretty understandable, we'll say, in that you are looking for something where you can be comfortable in a neutral shoulder. Your shoulders aren't up by your ears, and you aren't hunched over, you aren't bent over too much. So, all of my friends who have the cutting mats on the floor and cut on the floor, I hope that you will find some things around the house to get a setup to bring that up to the right height so that you can stand and cut. Because I think the name of the game is what we're seeing a lot in the research is that hunching over is probably the worst thing that we could do. So find some things around the house. Now, if your cutting station is too short, and a lot of them are, a really easy way to lift up just about any four-legged table that you have is with bed risers. We use these a lot in the store, and unfortunately, they're all underneath tables right now. But it's like a plasticky thing. You could get them at home stores, you can get them on, online stores. They're really easy to find when you know what you're looking for. But bed risers generally raise those tables enough to get you to the right height. And so, like any standard, I'm thinking of like an 8-foot banquet table or something that's a normal eating height, having that bed riser is generally enough to get you to the right area for cutting. Still might be a teeny tiny bit low, but it's so much better than cutting at waist height, for example. You want that just a little bit higher than that. Um, so those are some tips and tricks around cutting. Now, as far as cutting goes, there's another component to it, and this one I will demo live for you. That is your rotary cutter. Now, what we're looking at here is a setup, and I want to talk about this guy first before I even bring in the different options for rotary cutters. And that is things to help you out so that you don't have the death grip. Do you guys ever have the death grip on your ruler where you've got the claw and you're really dialed in and you want to make sure it doesn't move? So you've got that death grip on your ruler. A handle like this, a suction handle, works so well on your ruler. And you can see it's designed for any of these large size rulers where you're cutting, and it connects to your ruler by suction cups. So it's really easy to move to a different ruler if you need a different size, but it really is designed for these ones that are 12, 18, 24 inches long. And how it works is, and I'll step out of frame here so you can see that beautiful quilt behind me. But how it works is with that suction, you can hold on to this. It looks a little bit like a bathroom handle, right? The handles on the showers so you don't slip. And you use this the leverage of your hand on this section to make your cut. It helps with a couple of things. We're talking ergonomics today, and that really is the main design of this, but it also helps to make sure that your rulers don't slip and slide. So now that we've got that taken care of, let's talk about the different kinds of rotary cutters. Now, this one, you might recognize it. There are many different brands. These are just the ones that we had open in packages at the shop here. But this one is called an ergonomic rotary cutter. Now, the thing I will point out is that none of these are necessarily ergonomic. That really the tip I can give to you is find the one that works best with your hand, how you cut, no matter what the package says. It doesn't really matter if it doesn't work well for you. But this one is designed to, it's got two different features that we like. One is that the blade retracts and becomes available just by this handle. And it makes it really easy to sheath that blade so that you don't have it laying out. So you hold on to the blade, you press the release mechanism, and then you use this to cut. The reason it's called ergonomic is because you've got this curve here, which helps your wrist stay very straight and neutral. And I'm going to turn it so you can see just how mine is. But when I'm cutting, my wrist is very straight and neutral. And that is what this ergonomic cutter is designed to do. Another one that looks a lot different, which is also considered an ergonomic ruler or cutter, is the True Cut. Now, True Cut is the brand name. There might be others with this design, but this is the True Cut. And it is designed to be held in a very different position. So you can see how that fits in my hand and how I'm holding that and how that's different from this. Not a lot different, but it is different. So this is the True Cut. Now this one, I will say this grip takes a little bit of getting used to, but it really is very comfortable, and it too keeps the wrist in a very neutral position. The other one I'll bring to you, and I'll show you an example of one that maybe isn't necessarily the best. I'll save that for last. But here's another one that we really like in the shop, and this is the Femore. You can see it's got a straight handle, which means it's good for left and right-handed. That's one thing that I love about this, because as you saw, as I'm picking up this ruler, depending on what I'm cutting, I could go left or right-handed. So having that versatility is really important for me. It also helps share the love between both of my hands so that one doesn't get a little, I guess, used up maybe. It also has a nice big grip on the handle. And so that's another thing that you're really looking for, is the more open your hand is, the better off you are. And so this has a nice thick handle along with some grips there. So this one, depending on how you cut, you could kind of crank your wrist a little bit, and you could see my wrist was cranked at that particular angle, but it really depends on the height of your cutting station and how you need to hold your rotary cutter to make it work. Now, the one that is definitely gets the job done, but it's not necessarily my favorite, is this little guy. And the reason that this one is probably not my first choice as far as all the different rotary cutters that are out there is because of how skinny this handle is. The skinnier the handle, the tighter your grip, and the less space your hand will have to move. And so if you do a lot of cutting with your hand this tight close, remember what we were saying at the beginning of the show is the number of breaks that you need to take when you're doing something is directly proportional to how tight or cramped something is, how tight the position you have to be to do that task. And so with a blade like this, my hand needs to be pretty tight, so I need to take more breaks. That really is the tip here, is make sure that you are working first of all within your body and what your body needs. But if you do have something where your hand has to be a little tighter, just make sure you take more breaks and you'll be just fine. So after we cut all of the fabric, Then comes the fun part, right? Then comes the sewing. Now, I will say before I play this next video, I really hope for all of you that you don't ever have to watch a video of yourself sitting down because it was very shocking. So, with that, we'll go into the next video all about your sewing setup.
Now, you are probably going to spend the most amount of time at your sewing desk. So let's make sure that this is really dialed in nicely. No matter what your setup is, I've got ways to make it more comfortable for you. First, let's take a look at your chair and your seating situation. You want to make sure that your feet are flat on the ground. In this case, I've got my tippy toes, and that's about all that'll reach. So this chair needs to be lowered just a little bit for me. Secondly, you want to make sure that your knees are at a 90-degree angle and sitting comfortably. Last, you want to make sure that your hips are at a slightly more than 90 degrees. So I'm leaning back just a little bit and I want a chair that can allow me to do so. This is designed to help that lower back, and the lumbar support here definitely helps. It feels really good at sitting in just the right spot. But what I want to make sure is I'm not hunched over, or I fight the urge to hunch over. And having a chair that's dialed in to those areas will definitely help. Before I adjust my chair, let's take it over to the sewing machine and I'll show you what you're looking for there. For your sewing machine, what you're looking for is that your arms are going to be at a slightly less than 90-degree angle. Remember, for cutting and pressing, we were looking for 90 degrees. This we're looking for a little bit less. So lowering my chair actually will help this, because right now I'm leaning slightly down and I have the urge to hunch over my machine. So I think if I lowered my chair just a little bit, that would help on all fronts. So now I can get my feet to the ground, they're flat. I'm leaning back, and you can see that I'm going slightly upwards to my sewing machine, feeding my fabric in there. I want to make sure that my sewing machine isn't too high up, that I'm hunched over, because that you're just asking for back problems. Now, if I have a desk, this is really nice because it can be recessed down. It's designed specifically for sewing, so it's flat with a table. If you have a sewing machine that has to go on a table where you have that extra height, uh, definitely consider raising your chair. Maybe even if your feet need to be a little bit on your tippy toes. It's so much better to be at the correct height for your sewing machine. The rest will fall into place. Now, the other thing that I want to remind you about your sewing area is not as exciting. It is light. You want to make sure that your sewing area has enough light, because eye strain is really very real. It's so much harder to see things in the dark, and it's so much harder to see the amazing things you create in the dark. So make sure that you have enough light in your sewing area as well.
Okay, now with that, I hope that gives you some tips and tricks. One important thing to remember about sewing areas is that I'm going to say a giant percentage of us are using tables. For the longest time, I was using a old desk, like a children's school desk, but it was, adultish sized, that was in the basement of the house when I bought it. So it was left from the previous owner, and that was my sewing desk. And so a lot of times we don't just necessarily have things that are the exact right height or recessed and designed for sewing. The important thing is to make sure that the rest of your sewing area, so if you're talking about a sewing desk, for example, make sure that the rest of your setup, your chair, a pedal mat if you need one, are all designed to work around that, work in conjunction. In that, having something that might be just what you have available works as long as you're sewing. Just make sure that you are comfortable and that you're relaxed when you're sewing. The most important things to watch out for are, there are studies that have suggested that 8 in 10 Americans will have back pain at some point in their life, like worth discussing back pain at some point in their life. That's a huge number. That's 80%. And I would be willing to bet that that number is even higher for women and or sewers in general, just because of all the machinations we do. So that's a really high number, and it's important to recall that as you're setting up your setup. So with that, I think that we are at the end of the show. I'm just seeing if there's anything I forgot. Oh, you might be curious about the quilt behind me. I meant to show that at the beginning of the show, but we've got the Enrapture. This is the Enrapture fabric line by Juicy Juice. We've got that quilt kit behind me. It is really just, the colors are absolutely gorgeous and fabulous there. So I can't wait to see you all after Paducah. It's going to be a fabulous weekend, and we will see you same bat time, same bat channel. That is Tuesdays at 6:30 Eastern with Live with Gotham. We'll see you then, if not before, and I really hope before.